Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Becoming a Powerhouse Brand. Today's guest is someone who I met online through a community around 4 years ago, I think it was. I'm so excited to have her on the podcast today. So we have the beautiful soul, Holly Matthews, who is an absolute queen of empowering men and women to build confidence and self-belief, which you'll know if you've been listening to my journey. This has been a huge part of my own journey, and it's a huge part of actually building your brand. So Holly is a former TV actress, singer, and she's an incredible mum, an author, and founder of the Happy Me Project. And as a widow and mum of two, plus the world of entertainment, Holly has been through the rough and the raw, and she brings a really fresh, authentic approach to supporting others to find the happy. So, Holly, thank you so much for coming on today.
What a gorgeous introduction. It's always really interesting, I think, when you hear your own introduction, and it often makes me go, I've lived 100 lives and there's many things that have happened. And I'm so pleased to be here and so lovely to connect with you properly because the online world is amazing, isn't it? I mean, we're really lucky that we get to connect with people far and wide. And I do think we feel very invested in people's stories. And
Yeah.
I do feel very invested in your, which is funny, isn't it? I've watched you develop, you probably watched me, and like you kind of, you're on the sidelines, the periphery of watching somebody's growth and seeing them be brave, and you're like championing them, and they don't even know, but you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
I like to see them doing that. That's so good. And I've felt the same about you, watching you grow over the years and seeing how you've done and pivoted and done things differently. And it's really lovely to be here and to talk about that exact thing, right?
I love it. Oh, thank you so much. So, could you give us a whistle stop tour of who Holly Matthews is, how you've got to where you are today?
Absolutely. So I started as a TV actress. So I was 11 when I started in a kids' TV show called Biker Grove. And I got in that show because I wrote them a letter and I asked for a job. And I joke about this now, but I still do business in exactly the same way. I just ask directly, I find out who's the person that I need to ask, and I ask the person, can I do that? Or can I come on that? Or whatever. And I think that so many people don't ask for what they want, that it means I often get things because people are kind of taken aback that somebody just asked. And so I got on Biker Grove. I wrote a letter. And I got given it on my 30th birthday by my parents, found it on the computer. To be honest, I don't remember us having a computer then, nor like, I don't know if we had the internet, but we must have had this, like, old computer. I thought I'd like written it in crayon or something because I was like 10 when I wrote it. But I hadn't, but I had written it. And I know you'll have designers that are listening that will, designer dies when this happens. But I used Comic Sans as the font because, at the time, designer died there. A designer lost its wings as I said that. They're like, it's Comic Sans.
Quick
So
clap.
yeah, clap. I believe you. There are other fonts, but at the time, Comic Sans was like, I thought that was fancy. It was curly. It seemed fun. It seemed like I was a fun sort of person. So I wrote this letter to the casting department, and I said, "My name is Holly, and I'm an actress." Zero doubt in that. Absolutely zero doubt. I mean, I've had doubt in other areas of my life, but I knew I was an actress. I knew what I wanted. So I wrote this letter, and it says, "I'm not shy one bit," in it, just letting them know. I love drama. I love doing drama at my local group. And then at the very bottom, it's like, I want a part in the show. And then at the bottom, it just says, please write back quickly because I just, couldn't wait. And I wanted to know. And then they did get me in for an audition. I did a few auditions, didn't get the part. But at 10, 10, 11 years old, I didn't think, well, that's it, then I give up. What I thought was, then it's doable. Because I got on set, I met the casting director, just do it again. Right. And then 6 months later, before I got the chance to do that, I was cast in it. They wrote a part in for me. And so my whole of my growing up was on TV. And that brings with it, plus points and less than plus points. In a time when I guess, now everybody has a platform, whatever age they are, they've got a social media platform, whether they want to be famous or they don't, they've essentially got that. But when I was growing up, when you were growing up, there wasn't that level of anything like that. So when somebody was on TV, bearing in mind, most of us only had four if you were lucky, 5 TV channels. My TV did not get Channel 5 unless you stood on your head with an aerial outside the window. We weren't that rich. So you had a few TV channels. If somebody was on TV, they were famous. Like it was a big deal. So
Yeah.
to be on that show, thankfully, I also didn't understand the magnitude of it because we didn't have social media. So I didn't know what was going on outside my own school and my own, my own area, thankfully, because I'm not sure I would have coped with it. I worry a lot about young people being in the entertainment industry now and how much they have access to. So I grew up on TV. I only wanted to be an actor. I was like completely driven on this. I want to be an actress. I'm going to be in Hollywood. I'm going to be picking up my Oscar. I was thinking like 21 max, but that's where I'm heading. There was zero doubt in my mind. And when I left Biker Grove, I then signed to Sony. So my character was a singer on the show, and it was very much life imitating art. I met a manager, approached me, and things started to happen. So I left the TV show. I left Biker Grove. My character left to go to London. Did the scene on the train, going to London from the north, the bright lights, the big city. And I on the Saturday of that week in real life, I was on Top of the Pops Saturday as a singer. And that was kind of fluke, but it was for viewers, it was quite nice. So I went from, 7 years on a TV show. Everybody says you can't do that. That's so unheard of. The acting world is difficult. To then leaving that and signing with one of the biggest record companies in the world. So my model to this point is it ain't that hard. Like everyone says it is, but it isn't that big a deal. And then, so I did sing and I did MTV, Top of the Pops, Disney, Nickelodeon, all the magazines and all of that stuff. Was definitely thinking in my head, I will probably be friends with Jennifer Lopez very soon. We're probably going to be besties. And then on the the month before my single was coming out, a few things happened, and I'm not going to blame George Michael, but we're not going to blame him. Okay, George Michael signed back up with Sony, and all of the people I was working with kind of lost momentum with me, the little person from the TV show, and it kind of lost its momentum. And it's an interesting thing in terms of marketing and how things are done, because as 18-year-old Holly, I was watching things going, oh, I don't know if this is right, but who am I to say? I'm just a child. I don't know. And I let these adults in the music industry kind of decide things for me. Retrospect is interesting, but I didn't even know myself when it was going to be out in the world. So, and then it came out, and it came out in a bit of a poof, and it got to 32 in the top 40, which is still a top 40 record.
Yes.
So we're not, it's still a big deal. But what
Take
happened from that? I'll take the win. I'll still take it. We still did some fun things. But what happened for me was on the Saturday, I knew where it was going to chart in the UK charts, which even that actually now is different to, now. Like we don't really think about the Radio 1 charts. It's Spotify, or there's like lots of different ones. But at the time, it was you hit that top spot or you don't. And so the Saturday I knew, my management company knew where it was going to chart. On the Sunday, it goes out on the Radio 1 chart show. And just like I had done as a child, I listened to the radio. I wanted to hear my name go out, and it's a very long list. And I heard it go out, and I was kind of hoping it might have just, changed, but it hadn't. And on the Monday morning, I get a call to say, it's been lovely working with you, goodbye. And so for me, it was going from all this stuff to what next? But actually, I always say that was a really important point for me in terms of understanding how to pick yourself back up, how to pivot, how to look at what was important. Because actually, when I checked in there, I didn't actually want to be a singer. I just could sing, and it seemed like a fun idea, and you're not going to say no to doing that. So I realized I actually wanted to be an actor, and that's what I wanted to do. And so I went to drama school, and I did the whole, I'm going to be a proper actor, not just a child actor. People are going to take me serious. But I was ever, breaking the rules and sneaking off to auditions when I was at drama school. And I got a part in a show called Waterloo Road and didn't go back to drama school, and was working in the industry, casualty doctors, the bill, doing all of the rounds of TV stuff. And outside of that, I was modeling, and I was a radio presenter for CBeebies with Mr. Tumble, which as a mom, I'm like, I was trying to tell my kids, I used to work with Mr. Tumble, and they were like, no, you did not. And I've got no pictures of it because I don't, and I didn't know who he was at the time. I didn't know he was a big deal in kid world, you know. So I did loads of different things, and then I became a mom. I became a mom of two girls, Brooke and Texas, and as every mom or parent out there knows, suddenly your priorities shift. And I was finding it harder anyway to, you know, be getting to auditions. That world is very much your agent clicks your fingers and you've got to get to London having learned a script. And when you are a mom and you've got babies screaming at you and all this happening, that's already hard. So I think I was already looking at other things, and I was always, both me and my husband Ross were always on some idea, some business hustle, right? There was all this thing, we were selling something and people were like, what are they doing now? They're doing t-shirts, they're doing, we always had a thing. I had a very entrepreneurial brain from being very young, and I always wanted to support myself around acting. So became a mom, and then in 2014 my world changed completely, and we got the news that every single person dreads. And it was unexpected news. We were 29. My husband had brain cancer. And from the beginning, it was bad. Like, it was never good. It was rare. It was normally found in children. It was normally found at the front of the head. His was at the back. It was essentially like, if we think about looking for a cure for brain cancer, one of the most underfunded cancers, by the way, like literally nothing's changed in about 20 years in terms of research, which is staggering. And if looking for that cure is like a needle in a haystack, Ross's brain cancer, no one's looking for the needle. And we knew that. And Ross was very like me in that very black and white thinking. He was autistic, and I certainly think that served him, because he was like, I'm dead or I'm alive. They tell me I've got cancer, I can't feel it. Let them tell me that. And we didn't live in cancer. We didn't live in that space, you know, like we lived in the pockets between. In 2017, Ross couldn't keep that cancer at bay. And he died in Mighton Hospice, surrounded by people that he loved. And me and the girls started this new chapter. And for me, it was very organic. To other people, they will still say, well, how did you go from being an actor to a self-development coach and an author and all of this, the stuff that I've built since Ross's death? For me, it felt very organic. It felt like a space to put the pain. If there's painful stuff and I can push that into something good and there can be good from it, then it feels like a point to that pain, feels like a something. And so since Ross's death, I have built the Happy Me project, which is a no-nonsense self-development brand. I'm always looking for the low-hanging fruit, the ways that we can move into a space we feel good more than we don't, and with the quickest and easiest and most fun way of doing that. And since Ross's death, I've done workshops and events and built the Happy Me Project membership, which is my community. It's a safe space to land where we talk all things self-development. And I now have 2 books out, which my second book came out 2 weeks ago, and which is called Find Your Confidence, the no-nonsense guide to self-belief, plug. And I still can't believe I've written 2 books. Not that I doubt myself. I do have high self-esteem largely, but it's kind of one of those things where it's a tangible thing that you can have and people are reading it, and it's a very weird space to be in, but it has all come about because of Ross's death, not in spite of it, which it's a weird head space to have that. I mean, I get it and it's a good thing, but I also think it's interesting that awful things can happen to us that we don't want, but yet actually they can move us into a space of something really beautiful that wouldn't have happened if the bad thing hadn't happened. And it's such an important lesson. So there was no succinct in that just at all, but I think people kind of need sometimes to understand how I've gone from MTV or Top of the Pops or TV shows that, all that sort of, I mean, I say glamour, but it's not really glamour at all. It's just smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
Uh, to where I am right now, and I'm lucky. I love my life, even with the difficult bits. I still love it. It's it's a good place to be.
It is. Do you work with men and women? Do you
Hmm.
notice, or would you say there's like one particular area that the majority of people tend to find they struggle with in terms of building their confidence? Is there one sort of main trigger that you notice popping up?
I think I think it's often this feel. Sometimes people can't quantify. I don't think there's one. I mean, in my book that I've just written, there's 9 chapters, which are all specific areas around confidence. So I've picked out the ones that kind of come up a lot. So parenting being one, my Achilles heel for sure, feels like a very important job. You feel completely incompetent a lot of the time, which can dip our confidence. Appearance is a big one. And again, one that really was for me growing up on TV and having my face fixed for 6 months of the year definitely impacted my own self-esteem in that area. And I see that particularly in women, but also in men now more than ever before. There's in there, we've got things like standing up for yourself, starting something new. That can be huge for men and women. Job interviews, public speaking, and not necessarily public speaking as you or I might do on, stages or on screens like that. Well, I say not on screens like this, but even for some people, a Zoom conversation can be public speaking that feels very
Yeah.
intimidating. A work meeting, public speaking might be, to some people, it might even be things like, school stuff that you have to do with the kids or the school run. Even that can feel so. Social areas are definitely things that are across the board. Any social kind of interaction, we've got a little out of practice with some of it because of social media. As we said at the beginning, I think social media can be fantastic and the internet is incredible at connecting us. But if we don't get in real life as well, I think we could get very out of practice of how to hold a conversation. So this book that I've written is very practical. And as an actor, I've brought together 2 parts of my life. I've brought together the acting world and the coaching world. I've given tips in the book on external confidence. So, how do you present? How do you look confident? How do you use your hands to talk confidently? Your environment, how that impacts your confidence. But then also the internal work, which ultimately is the most important. But if we don't bring the two together, you can do all of the work on the internal stuff, which absolutely feeling good inside is the most important. But if you are still presenting in a way habitually, because perhaps you've been quite introvert and shy prior to this, or your body language has reflected an old version of you, if you still do that, the world will respond in the same way. And you've done all this work and you're thinking, why is it, I feel good. And you might not be presenting. So it's important they come together and both parts matter. A lot of people get very triggered by the sentence, fake it till you make it. But I have to say it works. You can't fake it forever. That doesn't work because internally you will feel horrendous and
Yeah.
disconnected. But there is an element of that does work. As an actor, I can't say to you that it doesn't work because actually, my younger years, I was doing a lot of faking. I was literally, I mean, I grew up being, in an era when neurodivergence was not a thing, apparently. None of us were neurodivergent. And being the weird creative kid with ADHD who was on the telly and wanting to desperately fit in at school. And so I created a very excellent version of myself that was able to be in the popular group at school, was able to do what my friends did, go down the park, getting drunk and presenting in a way that helped me socially at school. But going home in my own space and just feeling completely disconnected from anyone around me because I knew I was faking it.
Yeah.
And so actually for me, all that work was done right back then when I was working on how I was doing the how to look confident very well. But I also started to work on privately, how do we feel confident? How do I feel good? And I didn't. And so, for me, when I'm working with men and women, there are certain things, social things come up, lack of confidence in work life in some capacity, whether you're a business owner or you work in a company. There's lots of things there. A lot of that imposter syndrome stuff comes up. Anytime we push out of a comfort zone, our brain's like, what are you doing here? You need to go back where you were because this is, you're not supposed to be here. And I'm sure you've felt that. I know I have
Yeah,
regularly.
absolutely. That's actually what I was going to ask you about is that comparisonitis is a thing, isn't it? Like you can't help but feel like you're an imposter and that somebody else is better than you. And it can
Yeah.
really damage your confidence and your mindset as well, which obviously is what's going to hold you back. And obviously this is something that you've personally experienced as well. Do you have any sort of tips that you would recommend for anybody that is suffering with that at the moment for how they can overcome this?
Yeah, oh my God, it's such a thing. And we've got so much access to each other. So we're always just rubbernecking to see what are they doing that I'm not doing and comparing. I know it's a human thing. I don't think it's something we're just going to get rid of. I think I always say when it comes to comparison, firstly, I know logically we know it's nonsense, right? I think we're all smart enough to know this is not great. This is foolish. We also logically, and I have to say it's logically, because our subconscious and underneath the surface, it doesn't really believe it is. But logically, we know we are comparing ourselves to a shiny version. We
Yeah.
know that. We know we're going on social media and we're seeing the best bits. Yet, we still find ourselves pulled to the comparison, even with the knowledge, because we think, what if I'm wrong? And they are just a bit better than me, and their life is just a bit better, which is why I think it's really important you really assess who you're following and you look at that circle. I mean, I'm saying just following, it could be, somebody at work, but looking at certainly from a social media perspective, it's really easy. If someone you are following, and I genuinely mean this, I don't mind if it's me at all. If it was me and I, for whatever reason, you were following me and you felt a comparison pull or an irritation, anything, stop following because I'm not fit for you. That's okay.
Yeah.
We often hate follow people for some unknown reason, find ourselves following people because we think we're going to be inspired, and actually we're not inspired. We feel comparison. So if you find yourself doing that, be ruthless, unfollow anyone that makes you feel like that, even if it's just for a period of time till you can get a hold of that. I think it's always important to reflect on what it is that you're comparing yourself to and wanting. What is it that you want? Because there's something that you're feeling, the envy or the jealousy, and whatever that is, that's where the work needs to be done. So rather than focusing your time on, I don't know, compare, or even, worse still, sometimes pulling that person down, or being, well, it must be easier for them. I've had that so
Yeah.
much. It must be so easy, it's easier for you because you were on TV. Are you are you mad? It is not. I mean, ease is not something that comes easily to me, I'll be honest. It's, and we can often sit in that space. So I think unfollowing anything that isn't serving you, even if you come back to it, right? Doesn't matter who it
Yeah.
is, look at what is the thing that you're feeling jealous or envious about. Then look at how can I make this happen? So rather than seeing these people as, I don't know, the competition, the enemy, if they've got it, I can't, recognizing if they can do it, then there's a space for it. It can be done. Much like my mindset as a kid, when I didn't get the thing straight away, rather than thinking, well, I can't have it then, it's not available to people like me, thinking, well, if they can do it, maybe I can do it. And actually, that is, habitually, especially women, we're taught to, be rivals with other women. There's not enough space. We've all got to be rivals. We've got to fight each other for these one set of customers, which is nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's madness. I mean, I often have clients who I work with, and I work with a lot of women particularly women. As I say, I work with men and women, but I tend to work with women who are female business owners. And all of this stuff comes up, particularly comparison. We're spinning ourselves out. What are they doing? They've done this new thing and they're doing this, and should I be doing that? And we're exhausted. And one of the things we look at is what is the pull? And if you see that person as somebody who has a life that you want, how can we shift that into a space of not comparison, but inspiration? That's not always available for us. So if it's not available to you in that time and you can't get a hold of it, then I would say maybe for the time being, you just work on your internal stuff and building your self-esteem, focusing on what you want and creating that. And you just turn down the noise of that until you can come back and see it as inspiration.
Yeah.
And this is often we're very habitual as human beings, and so we get stuck in that pattern of that negative sort of comparison,
Yeah.
and the noise in our head is very loud. Once you get past that and you start to really pour back into yourself, and you're not as distracted by the stuff outside of you, you will notice something that will happen. You'll realize, I'm no longer doing that, and it'll be a pivotal thing. And I don't think I've been really bad at this for a long time, I have to say. Now I have definitely worked on staying in my own lane, but I had a really nice moment recently where I really clearly realized, oh, this is good. Like, this is not, women are we need to compete. And it was so I got a notification on my phone from someone who tagged me to say that I was in Psychologies Magazine, and it was an interview I'd done ages before. And it sounds, I mean, this is growth in itself. I had forgotten it was good. I didn't know when it was going in. And it was an article that I'd written. So someone had posted it. So I went out, my daughter, I was all excited because there's something nice in taking the kids when that happens. So I went and got the magazine. On the front cover was a friend of mine, Anna Martha, who is a psychotherapist and author. She's incredible. You probably know
Yeah.
her. And we'd become friends over the last few years, online friends, and then in person as well. And she was on the front cover. In the past, maybe even in the acting world, and if I'd seen my friends on the front cover of a magazine, the green-eyed monster would have been so strong. And I've had the front cover of Psychologies Magazine on my vision board for about 15 years, or however long that magazine's been running. And so to see someone on there in the past, it had been so triggering. I'd have been like, oh, it'd have been horrible. It'd been such a
Yeah.
negative. And it wasn't. I saw Anna on the front cover and I was so happy. I was like, oh my God, Anna's on the front cover. And it didn't feel like then it's not available to me. It genuinely felt like, oh, then it's doable because I know Anna and I speak to her and Anna's on the front cover. That's amazing. Maybe I could do that. And I think it's practice, and it's being ruthless with what you allow your brain, because your brain will go there. Our
Yeah.
brains, we're so wired to do it. So don't be hard on yourself when it happens. Just notice it and see it as, ooh, I need to do some work. I need to
Yeah.
turn down that noise. And I need to make sure I'm focused on me. Because when we're focused on us and we're busy doing the things that, taking that action, we ain't got time. We're not looking at other people's stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the biggest thing. It's turn down the noise. Remind yourself of times, and maybe this is a nice little tip, when you met someone in real life or you heard someone's real story and it did not match their social media, and you realized it's all bollocks. I've got a really good one actually of myself, my own comparison. I did write about this in my first book. There was a girl so this was the cusp of me becoming a mom, and I was pregnant. Was I pregnant with Brooke or Ted? I must have been pregnant with Brooke because it must have been the first time around. So I'm pregnant with Brooke. I'm all massive and feeling a bit like I can't act. I'm not acting. Because I can't get auditions now because I'm pregnant and I'm expanding. And I was trying to find different ways of doing things, but I was just in this transition period. And I watched this girl who I'd done some modeling with in the past. She'd gone to America, right? So you already know I was ready for Hollywood. So
Yeah.
I've seen her go to America. And over the time I was pregnant, I was watching her social media. I was hate watching it. I was watching it and making it was like picking a scab. I was watching her go to, drama classes and then be on set and doing photo shoots and fancy parties and doing yoga on the beach in LA. And I'm there, frumpy in my stomach, and I'm mad and I'm hungry and I'm annoyed at the world. I can't move. I'm uncomfortable. Someone's kicking me in the ribs. And I'm like, I kept doing it. And then I checked myself because I had done this work already. And I was like, what are you doing? And so I actually unfollowed her. Now, I didn't hear from her for quite some time. When I did, I was in a space of beginning to start doing coaching. And she contacted me and she asked me if I would coach her. And I learned more about her story. I didn't end up coaching her in the end, but I learned that during that time that I was watching her stuff, creating my own narrative about how amazing her life was in my head, she was miserable. She was starving because she was out in Hollywood, not eating. She was starving, she was punishing herself with yoga. It wasn't even an enjoyable thing. She missed home. She wasn't enjoying being out there and doing the things. It was not the story I had created. And actually, all she wanted was to be a mum. And I was like, if ever the universe is just going to slap you in the face and tell you to get a hold of yourself
Yeah.
and the nonsense in here, that was it for me. So reminding yourself of times when it wasn't true, and that might just be able to read it back in a little bit when it
Yeah.
begins.
And like you said, even with the sort of entertainment world with it all being smoke and mirrors, it's exactly the same with social media. What you perceive as being one thing might be the complete opposite because you're only seeing somebody's sort of best version of themselves online.
100%. Or we see like either, I don't know if we see now, because we've had such a backlash against that, we see creators almost going one way or the other. So it's like intense, like I'm absolutely everything about me is chaotic. I'm a shit parent. And I actually find that as much because I feel that's performative as well.
Yeah.
I really think, and I do think we are starting to see creators do this now, but I really try to where I can. I don't always get it right because we're just, we're busy and we're posting,
Yeah.
but I try to show the, not necessarily I'm not showing, I try to keep some things of my life private now, but I do try to show the chaos. I do at the very least talk about the fact that there's nothing in my life that is like, I don't think there's nothing that is easily is habitual behavior or isn't chaotic. There is no like, I mean, people would come to me, for to see, they'd come and look at the way I do business, and it will not be the same any day. It's chaotic, it's messy. There's no pretty linear strategy. Somebody else with a different brain is going to have to create that for me and tell me off until I get to do it because it doesn't happen that way. So I do try to share that side of things. But the other side of things is I do nice things that are shiny and fun, but there is also that side. And I think it's just reminding ourselves that there's both. And every
Yeah.
shiny, new book coming out, there's the week after you're overwhelmed and crying in a pile of washing, which definitely has happened probably 3 times this week. So, it's just reality.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're a mum, and a lot of the listeners on this show are mums as well. Do you have any sort of daily routines or practices that you use to empower your children? Because I think this is something that I find so amazing. We're in this weird stage at the moment where kids of today are very different to how when we were kids and the things that we're exposed to. And I just think the things that we can do now to help our children to grow up into more like stable beings because we're just so programmed to go along this certain path that's not always the right way. So, what would you recommend for any parents out there to help their children?
Lovely question. And obviously, one as a parent, I think about a great deal. And the parenting chapter in my book is certainly not a chapter on how to be a parent. That would be ludicrous. It's quite the opposite. It's very much finding your own feet and your own way. But I think when it comes to confidence, and this is definitely something I really try to instill in my girls, there's a few things that feel very important. One is finding something that your children love and pouring everything into that and not worrying because all of us are conditioned and depending on what your background is, you might have been conditioned to think they've got to do their GCSEs, they've got to get these A-level results and they've got to go that route. I know possibly it's more opened up than that, but I still think there's even me who spent a lot of time not at school. I'm still conditioned to think, but my kids need to do well at school. They need to do well in this test. There was still part of me, I had to really look at that as my kids have gone on into secondary school because I realized, firstly, no one around me uses anything from their school life.
Yeah.
at all. And second of all, like nobody ever decides, if there's very few people that decided what they wanted to do in school and that went that route. So let's stop pretending we make that decision when we're 15 or 16. That's madness. What I've realized is that actually, if I look on my own experience, finding something that I loved at just 10, 11 years old and feeling so happy that I had a thing I was good at. I had this one thing I was good at acting. I felt competent there, felt confident in myself in that area. Outside of that, there was loads of lack of confidence. But having one thing that I was good at and people said I was good at, and I had that validation and I felt that, it allowed me to be braver in other areas where I maybe didn't feel as confident. So I think for all of us parents, it's one is letting go of the stories that we've been told of how it's supposed to look. We are so lucky that we live in a world where our children, how amazing is this, can decide they love something and they can create a world around that. That
Yeah.
was not an option for us when we were growing up. It wasn't, we couldn't fathom it. Like, yeah, I mean, we could go, oh, well, that person over there who had, their family had money and maybe they could do it, but not us. And so now our children, you've got kids on the internet unboxing toys and they're millionaires. You
Yeah.
can literally make up a job and you can make it happen, right? I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's straightforward. I'm not saying I dislike education because I love learning and I want my children to love learning. And I unfortunately believe that sadly the school system doesn't fit most children now. That's just an unfortunate fact. It's not the teachers, it's the structures and the systems that are
Yeah.
completely outdated. And so we have to let go of some of the this is how it has to go because it's just nonsense. And even if your children want to go an academic route, they can do that in when they're bloody 21 if they
Yeah.
want. It doesn't stop. Like we worry so much about this timeline. The thing we should be concerned about is whether our children's confidence is being knocked out of them, their self-esteem is being knocked out of them. And so whatever your kid is into, whatever it is, whether it's football, and my youngest is into football, my oldest is into her acting. And I tell you what, my youngest, who's 11, until she started to watch the women's football, right, and had these models of like these amazing women, um, she definitely was less confident. There was definitely what is my place? Her older sister's quite a big character and had already found her thing that she loves dancing and singing and acting. So there was definitely this feeling of what's my thing? Like, what do I do? And she's since over the last year or so really got into football and sport, and her confidence in all areas has massively improved. So whatever your children are into, pour into that, cheer them on, make that a big deal, whatever it is, because then there's a much bigger chance that your children will step into something
Yeah.
else. The other thing that's become really important, I think, is massive, is and for the parents, they might need to learn this with their children because they might not be there either. But it's learning to advocate for yourself, to stand up for yourself, and not be afraid to not be the good girl or the good boy, right? We are very much conditioned to, just fit in, just be nice and play nice and all of those things. I'm not bringing my children up to play nice. I'm bringing my children up to advocate for themselves, to
Yes.
stand up for themselves. When they're children, there's definitely going to be some kickback on that. And you might even find people around you don't like that. You might not even like that sometimes, because quite honestly, bringing up sassy, confident kids means I get that version of their, teenage hormonal self as well. But I'm confident that giving them the ability to speak their truth and to, even if I don't like it, I will say to my girls all the time, the only thing for me that's important is that you create a life that you feel good at, you feel
Yeah.
happy. I know that sounds a bit, I don't want to set my children up to think, oh, we've always got to be happy. That's not, you gotta let those feelings through. And certainly in my house, we've had grief and loss and big feelings in this house. And I've always allowed them to get it out. That's always been important. And I think that really matters in their confidence, because
Yeah.
if we're teaching our kids to swallow off their feelings, then again that comes out elsewhere, and it's
Yeah.
confident to say I'm feeling this way. we can guide them, and when is, we want to build resilience as well. That's very important. So I've always, as well, with in terms of confidence and stuff with the kids, I've always tried to get them to do little things, certainly socially as well. Whether that is, you go and pay for the bill, here's my card, or here's my, you
Yeah.
go and do that, or little things like that. And also, and this might be the actor in me, or it might be the neurodivergent in me, but I'm all about scripting, right? So in my book, there is a lot around how to script situations and practice that script so that you can improvise the rest of it, but you've got something to fall back on. So when my kids were younger, we did used to script out how to, when they went to school, my oldest went to school for the first time. Now she is autistic, so I actually, in some ways, it didn't help her diagnosis, because they were like, she's very good socially. And I'm like, yeah, I heard her do that script earlier. It's the same script. But it did help her actually to make friends, because
Yeah.
we work out, what do we say here? What do we do there? And as they got older and they had those friendship conflicts that kids have, we would talk, well, what would you say? And what do you want to, and how would you say it? And I would get them, from an external perspective of confidence, I would get them to practice that out loud. And that has definitely been key to them, having that confidence to do so. In terms of the social media aspect of stuff, that's going to be a big one for this generation. And
Yeah.
I think they'll be better at it than the generation before. I think actually we're seeing a difference, and they're like, I don't want to be on social media.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
want to do
true.
that. Hopefully there's a bit. But I also showed my children very early on the fakery. So my kids, when they were really young, I used to show them Facetune, and I say, look, all of this is fake. None of this is real. It's all smoke and mirrors. Long before probably a lot of people did, because I'd seen that in the acting world. I used to pick up a magazine and see I'd read through a magazine 3 times and not realize it was someone I knew, because the photograph was so airbrushed.
Yeah.
I've always shown my kids that. And even when they were really young, they used to say, like, oh, is this person's very what do they say, fuzzy. They're very fuzzy, aren't they? They're fuzzy face, and like, they are very fuzzy. That's because that's not real. I don't think we're gonna, I've got obviously a teenager already. I don't think they're still gonna go through the same stuff we did. We've just got to keep pouring the message in of, this bit's not real, you are amazing, and keep giving them that affirming love. And we just got to hope we see them through the difficult teenage
Yeah.
years. It's not there's nothing clear cut about all of that, is it? But definitely finding what they love and letting them do that, and doing whatever you can, to help pour that in. All of our access online, YouTube is your friend, TikTok is your friend when it comes to being able to learn skills very freely, which is amazing. And just, yeah, encourage whatever it is, even if it's not something you have a clue about, even if you think that's not going to help them get a job, doesn't matter. I
Yeah.
don't Doesn't matter what that is, because if they feel like, oh, I'm really good at this thing, they might become something completely different. And that's an important message, I think, for our children. And we, I think, have to let go of stuff there, because we've got our own stuff that we thought, oh, this is how they're going to be successful. This is how they're going to be better than me. This is how their life is going to be better. We're probably wrong. We don't know. And I think it's actually quite freeing for us as parents, right? Because then we
Yeah,
can
definitely.
come up with all of the answers. You just can come up with your own, because you're going to be better than me. That's great. You're going
Love
to
it.
know.
Like you say, the opportunities that are out there for anybody now to do anything, it's just insane. Like, yeah, I can't wait to actually see what the younger generation are gonna be capable of.
Inspired. I spoke to a 15-year-old at the weekend, and a lovely girl called Harriet, and she was so inspiring to me. And she was talking about all the pressures of GCSEs and all of this. And I said, mate, you're 15. You don't have to know what you want to do with your life.
Yeah,
Go and have fun. And my whole life has been just create good stories. It might not, you might go down a route and it might not be the thing you love, but it'll be a good story. Maybe you'll
yeah,
write about it in a book one day.
yeah.
Just
The
have
amount
fun.
of women I meet now that are in their 30s, 40s, even 50s, they're like, I've just discovered what it is I want to be doing. Like, you don't have to decide at the age of 15, 16, 18.
God, there's other
Crazy.
things to be doing then. You don't need to,
Yeah,
and we don't, and I love that you said that as well, because I do think, we have to remember we can literally decide today, and some of your listeners will be listening thinking they're on the cusp of this feeling of like, I need to go one way. Like, you can decide right
Yeah.
now to do something completely different. Go with that. We're not, I mean, I don't believe in an afterlife. So to me, this part of this life is really precious. Like, don't waste it doing shit you don't want to do.
Yeah.
There's no point. There's also a chapter in my book on starting something new. And my mum called me, right? And my mum called me this week. She's not a person necessarily that will always gush about the things I do or anything like that. My dad will. My dad's like, he will definitely do that. My mum was very quiet the last couple of weeks. She hasn't really said that much to me in terms of the book coming out or anything. And she phoned me and she said, "Oh, I'm very inspired." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "I've been up all night reading your book and I'm
Oh,
really inspired." And she said, "I've read that chapter on starting something new, and I'm sat down with my pen and paper and I'm going through what you've said to do in there. And I'm going through some stuff and it's really made me think I want to just try." And she's obviously got some things she wants to do. Don't know yet. We'll wait and see, right? But she's in her 60s. We don't have to be, there's not a cut-off, is there, of learning
yeah.
or what we can do. I love that. I love that you teach that on this podcast because it's just it's so important. And I want to hear what your listeners do because I always like to hear what people do, what's their work or their business, and
Yeah.
also how we're growing and stretching ourselves. Let's
Yeah.
just have fun stories where we can all be really, if we're lucky enough to be old and grey and we just get to sit around and go, "Do you remember that day when we did that one thing?" Or "I remember when I set up that business," and I remember when I decided I want to be a clown, or I don't know what they're going to do. And that was weird. Wasn't that funny? We'll be great old people with excellent stories. I love it.
Exactly, definitely. So just to wrap up, you've got your new book out, Find Your Confidence. It's out now, isn't it?
It is fully out in the world. People have
Amazing.
got and you can get it in all the spaces you can get books, Waterstones, Amazon. And if people come and follow me on social media, it's I am Holly Matthews across most things. I'm sure you'll put links below.
Yeah.
And come and let me know you've came from here as well, because I love to know where people have come from. And when you get the book, it is not a book it's not allowed to sit on the shelf as shelf help, right? Not that book. And I know there'll be lots of readers who like to keep everything pristine. This is a book, you're going to bend it, you're going to write in it, you're going to highlight, you're going to fold the corners. And I know some of you are like, "Oh, no," you're going to need because this is a book where you're going to do stuff in it, and you don't have to read it in a linear fashion, front to back. You can flick. I mean, I don't read like that. You can read it any way that you want. You can jump to a chapter you feel pulled to. And even if there's a chapter in here where you think that's not for me, I'm not, like, say, job interviews, maybe you're not going for a job or you're not ever at this moment, still read it because each of the activities in there will relate to something else. But I've just, put them in there as well. But still read that chapter and take the actionable points because you'll definitely still find something. So I'd love to come and see. I'd love to see you all and hear what you've done, all the action steps that you've taken since reading it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Holly. What is next for you?
Happy Me TV. I definitely want to do bring this to life and stop talking about doing that and actually just do it messy, which is what I've realized I need to do. And genuinely more in-person stuff. I feel very much pulled. I did an event on confidence the other week, so more in-person stuff and more traveling around, meeting different people. That feels like the next stage, moving about, chatting about confidence and how we can feel more happy and less crappy, but out and about, meeting real.
Yeah.
I want to look in people's
In
eyes,
person.
person stuff, more of that IRL, which will make my daughters cringe. I just said IRL because I have, and that's how we'll end it.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Polly, for coming on today. If you've listened to this episode and really enjoyed it, please do let us both know. Send us a DM, leave a comment, leave a review. We would love to know what you thought of this episode. And I will be back on the next episode. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Holly. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you're ready to unlock the secrets of building your own personal brand, head over to my website, baileyandrue.com, where you can grab my free Brand Brilliance Blueprint today. It's your roadmap to success in the world of branding. And hey, let's stay connected beyond the podcast. Follow me on Instagram at baileyandrue for daily inspiration, behind the scenes insights, and exclusive content to fuel your brand journey. See you there.